Okay, so we will go ahead and get started then. Hi, folks. Thank you all so much for joining us today for our press conference responding to the hate-motivated attack at the University of Waterloo. My name is Aubrianna Snow, and I'm the Stakeholder Relations Specialist for Possibility Seed's Courage to Act project, which released the Our Campus, Our Safety report last summer. So to give you a sense of how this session is going to flow, all our speakers are going to deliver their remarks, and then we'll have time to receive some questions. So for the question portion, I ask that you please use the raise hand function at the appropriate time and direct your question if applicable. Otherwise, just please ensure that your mics are muted. Thank you. So our speakers today will be as follows. First, we'll have Katie Traynor, who's Vice President of the Waterloo Undergraduate Students Association, followed by Vivian Chiem, President of the Ontario Undergraduate Student Alliance. And then we'll have Manpreet, who's Chair of the British Columbia Students Alliance, followed by Sophia Fabiano, President of the St. Francis Xavier Students Union. And then I will be speaking to close us off. So that's a sense of how it'll go. And now I would like to pass the floor to Katie to begin her remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, and good morning, and thank you all for joining us today, and thank you Possibility Seeds for organizing and facilitating the press conference today to bring awareness to such an important issue. So my name is Katie Traynor, my pronouns are she, her, and I'm currently the Vice President at WUSA, which is the Waterloo Undergraduate Student Association.
Indirectly.
And I am also a member of USA, the Ontario Undergraduate Student Alliance, and today I'll be joined by a colleague of mine, Vivian, Chiem, who is the Government and Stakeholder Relations at the Wilfrid Laurier University Students Union. First, I would like to reiterate our sorrow and heartfelt sentiments to all of the people, the students, and the community that was affected by the attack at the University of Waterloo campus. And as a student at the University of Waterloo, and a student representative myself who can echo the voices of a lot of the members within our community, I can very well say that I know the pain, the frustration, and the sadness that has been seen on our campus through the past couple of weeks. As students, we deserve a safe, inclusive learning environment that's also free from violence and the threat of harm. For a long time now, we have known about the prevalence of gender-based violence at post-secondary institutions and rising queer phobic rhetoric seen on university campuses and through international media. WUSA and USA have consistently advocated against this issue and the rising queer phobic rhetoric in nature that is occurring at our post-secondary institutes. For example, in 2021, we saw a 37% increase in hate crimes. And within that, we saw a 14% increase in hate crimes that are specifically targeting sexual orientation. We must use this press conference not only as an opportunity to reflect on gender-based violence that occurs at our post-secondary institutions, but most importantly, advocate and address gender-based violence prevention response at our institutions so students have the ability to feel authentic and have their safety ensured. I will now pass it on to Vivian to continue remarks for today.
Thank you, Katie. So what happened at Waterloo is tragic and indicative of the growing sentiments around a world that targets and harms individuals from the LGBTQI+ community. The post-secondary experience is meant to be a safe space for all individuals. It's a time of growth, exploration, and self-discovery. This requires our institutions to be safe and nurturing spaces wherein individuals can express their identities freely and be their true, authentic selves. However, individuals from the LGBTQI+ community face unwelcoming campus climates with gaps in targeted health and wellness services. Results from our biannual survey, OUSS, which represents 160,000 students across the province, shows that 50% of Two-Spirit and LGBTQI+ students do not feel completely safe on campus, with 7% of them not feeling safe at all. The impact of a hostile campus climate is detrimental as it impacts the mental, physical, and emotional well-being of LGBTQI+ students disproportionately. The OUSS shows that 50% of Two-Spirit and LGBTQI students reported having poor mental health. This is unacceptable, and the provincial governments need to act promptly and effectively to ensure that those pursuing and providing education are safe. Approaches to this work must create a system that proactively addresses sexual violence and harassment, which requires systemic policy change that is built through a trauma-informed lens. This is vital to cultivating a culture where prevention is the norm and where society as a collective can better look out for one another to mitigate harm in environments where students can feel safe and free. We ask that, number one, the provincial government should, in collaboration with experts, gender-based violence educators, students, and those with lived experience, create a gender-based violence prevention framework for post-secondary institutions that outlines best practices and identifies toolkits for prevention programs. Number two, the provincial government should mandate all post-secondary institutions perform regular campus safety audits to identify safety concerns and ensure that the mandatory safety and accessibility standards are being met. And number three, the Ontario Association of College and University Security Administrators should work with the Ministry of Labor, Training, and Skills Development to mandate and deliver training for all campus security officials in trauma-informed and survivor-centric responses to disclosures to create safe, supportive reporting structures. Students deserve to have a post-secondary secondary experience that is fulfilling, fun, and memorable for the right reasons, not wrought with fear for their safety and well-being. Students have expressed to us the extreme frustration that they feel due to a lack of proactive measures and accountability in addressing gender-based violence to create safe campus spaces. We hope that the provincial government, post-secondary institutes, and individuals involved listen to the voices of students and proactively and collaboratively take measures to address gender-based violence. Thank you for listening, and now I'll pass this on to Manpreet.
Thanks, Vivian. Hi, everyone. My name is Manpreet, pronounced she, her, and I am the chairperson of the Alliance of BC Students. Today, I'm joining you all from the unceded and stolen territories of Musqueam, Squamish, Katzie, Kaikai, and Twasan First Nations, and I feel it is crucially important in this conversation to acknowledge the hate and intolerance and gender-based violence that is directed towards Indigenous peoples because of the effect of colonialism, especially missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls and Two-Spirit people. Without acknowledging the colonial entitlement to Indigenous bodies, lives, and lands, we will not be able to address this crisis. The recent June 28th attack at the University of Waterloo was a terrible act of violence motivated by hatred and intolerance. The Alliance of BC Students and all the other students around BC stand in solidarity with the victims, with our colleagues at the Waterloo Undergraduate Student Association and the Ontario University Student Alliance, and with everyone affected by this. Let us be clear. The attack at the university is a symptom of escalated crisis of hate and intolerance in our society and our public discourse, which has deep roots in gender-based violence. This attack on a gender studies class, motivated by hatred and intolerance of gender identity and gender expression, comes at a time of rising hate against the 2S LGBTQIA+ community. Homophobia, transphobia, and queerphobia are ideologies of hate with deep roots in patriarchy, misogyny, and colonialism. Gender-based violence is what happens when these ideologies go unchallenged. They all stem from a belief of entitlement over other people's bodies, lives, and autonomy. Feminist and queer scholars have been saying this for decades. It is important to recognize because preventing hateful violence like this starts with challenging the hateful ideologies that fuel it. And we definitely need to challenge these ideologies before they give rise to more horrific events like this. Students, faculty, and allies have been doing this work for years. We have done the research, formed the groups, started the initiatives, and have many more plans that could help if the resources were there. We know what the problems are. There is the data, the surveys, and the stories, but now we need resources and support to address these issues as well. We need governments and post-secondary institutes to step up and be proactive, fund and support preventive measures like education, workshops, research, peer support programs, safer campus initiatives, so that this never happens again. Being proactive creates safer campus communities, while being reactive to incidents like this struggles to address the root cause of the issue and tries to respond to violence instead of preventing it. We need to be proactive. We need gender-based violence prevention and response initiatives. This should be a wake-up call for post-secondary institutions and governments across the country. We need funding for programs and research that students and allies have been doing to prevent and respond to gender-based violence. Students and allies such as the Alliance of BC Students, Possibility Seeds, Students for Consent Culture, the Anti-Violence Project, and many other student unions have been doing this work for years. The Alliance of BC Students has endorsed the Our Campus, Our Safety Action Plan, co-authored a report called Shared Perspectives, a joint publication on campus sexualized violence prevention and response, and written an open letter to the government of British Columbia earlier this year, representing 25 organizations and over 375,000 students. We regularly lobby politicians for changes to the Sexualized Violence Policy Act and fund sexualized and gender-based violence prevention and response programs. Possibility Seeds put out countless resources, toolkits, and free seminars. The Anti-Violence Project delivers countless workshops teaching students about consent, receiving disclosures, and supporting survivors. Students for Consent Culture does detailed policy research for provincial governments and post-secondary institutions that they can implement now. We know what the problem is. We've done the work. Governments and schools need to get on board and support the work we're doing to help us keep safe. And now I'll pass it on to Sophia.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sophia Fabiano. I'm the president of the StFX Students Union on the East Coast. And I just wanted to say thank you to Katie, Vivian, and Manpreet for their thoughtful statements and words. So the gender-based attack at the University of Waterloo has impacted students across the country, and we are processing this hate-fueled attack from coast to coast to coast. Our hearts are with our 2S LGBTQIA+ community who are facing an increase of direct gender-based violence and threats around the globe. The rise in hate crimes emphasizes the need for critical review of post-secondary institutions and the government as to how they will act in protection and support of those facing gender discrimination in Canada. We know how important the roles of our governing and educational systems are in dismantling the cultural stereotypes associated with gender and sexuality, and therefore reducing violence against communities. The enforcement of harassment and discrimination policies and educational practices that inform on discrimination through perceived gender norms are necessary in shifting the narrative and ensuring the safety of all students. As students, we recognize how the increase in gender-based violence on campus is deeply impacting the entire campus community, and some feel unsafe in classrooms. We need to ensure safe spaces for students, peer support groups, counseling, and other measures to support victims and targets of this violence. Post-secondary institutions should be reviewing and changing their policies on hate, harassment, and discrimination, while safely and intentionally be creating a safe space for survivors to have a role in these changes. The government and institutions have a responsibility to not only be retroactive, but proactive, and acknowledge how cultural stereotypes are motivators for gender-based violence and develop methods to counteract these motivators and keep the 2S LGBTQIA+ community safe. Institutions have a responsibility in building safe campus communities, but they can't do that work alone. The work to end violence is rooted in community and will take a collective approach across sectors and across the country to address it effectively. These aren't isolated events. They impact everyone across Canada, and we all need to take action to ensure that the right to safe education is protected. Incidents like the one that occurred at the University of Waterloo impact everyone pursuing higher education in Canada. It's important that as student leaders, we are meeting, discussing, and advocating for changes on our campuses and across the country at post-secondary institutions. Working together to support students in Canada is an important part of our role as student leaders. Holding our institutions, governments, and fellow students accountable and having hard conversations about the culture we are growing and learning in is so crucial to create that change. I'm so thankful to have been able to work with Our Campus, Our Safety and student groups across the country to bring student voices, issues, and advocacy to the forefront and discuss the importance of dismantling harmful culture when it comes to gender-based violence. Thank you. I'll pass it back to Aubrianna.
Thanks so much, Sophia, and thank you so much to all of our wonderful speakers for your thoughts. I've got a few things to add before we move into questions. So my name is Aubrianna Snow. I use she and her pronouns, and I'm tuning in as a guest today from Treaty 6 territory. I'm an incoming graduate student at the University of Alberta, and I'm also the Stakeholder Relations Specialist at Possibility Seeds Courage to Act project, which produced the Our Campus, Our Safety report in conjunction with student leaders from across the country. So I want to speak today a little bit about the importance of institutions working to address incidents like the one that occurred at Waterloo in a coordinated and uniform way, because no matter where students are going to school, they should be able to expect the same standards for a safe learning environment. The need for sustainable and generous funding and resources to address issues of gendered violence on campus has never been clearer. There are many things that senior administrators and campus communities can do to ensure that the motivations behind violence on campus are addressed at the root rather than just reacting when tragedies occur, as folks have outlined. I want to really emphasize that as per the Courage to Act guide to responding to critical incidents of gender-based violence on campus, all campuses should have a task force dedicated to addressing serious incidents like the one at the University of Waterloo. The work to end gendered violence on campus is community work, and it's not something that institutions have to face on their own. The tools for building a cohesive and trauma-informed response to incidents like the one at Waterloo exist. Implementing these tools now is one of the most important ways that campuses and senior administrators can take action in solidarity with the Waterloo community and survivors everywhere. Increasing police presence on campus isn't the answer to addressing these issues. To ensure that our responses to campus violence don't cause further harm to marginalized folks like racialized and 2S LGBTQ+ populations, it's essential that those responding to and preventing violence on campus fully understand the deep and wide-reaching impacts of trauma. Campuses are a microcosm for greater social issues, and it makes sense that we're seeing issues of division in society play out on post-secondary campuses. Folks in power have the opportunity to build and strengthen frameworks to address issues of gendered violence, both on campus and more broadly in society. By using tools like Courage to Act's guide on responding to critical incidents, institutions can address gendered violence in a thoughtful way that emphasizes action rather than reaction. Students have been calling for change for a long time, as folks have said, including in last year's Our Campus, Our Safety report. The asks presented in that document also represent a really strong starting point for folks looking to address gendered violence on campus. Without the proper systemic learning approach in place, campuses are failing to address issues of violence at the root. Senior administrators need to engage with students, faculty, staff, and organizations doing violence prevention work to ensure that a safe learning and working environment is a reality and not a hope. Thank you so much. We can move into questions now. Again, please use the raise hand function, and I'm happy to direct your question. Folks are also free to drop their questions in the chat if that's more useful. I see a question from Fakia.
Hey, yeah, my name is Fakia. I'm a reporter with the Canadian Press. I was wondering, maybe, I don't know who might be best to speak about this. Maybe Katie, you can address this because you're a student at Waterloo. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about what your thoughts are on Waterloo's response since the attack happened. University administration has said that they have been, engaging with various community groups to address this issue on campus and figure out what more they can do. Like, what are your thoughts on Waterloo's response so far, and how it's making students feel?
I guess I'll respond to that then. As a student, I would say the administrative response originally after the attack is not something that a lot of students on our campus were satisfied with. For instance, there have been, I wouldn't say specific attacks against gender identity and gender expression within the years that I have been attending the University of Waterloo, But within 1 year, since I have attended the University of Waterloo, there was a incident within one of our university residences, and that occurred at CMH Claudette Miller Hall. And I think the rhetoric and sentiment around security and distrust with, let's say, our university administrators really stems from this background of not feeling safe, not feeling protected, not feeling connected to our university as a whole. For example, one of the main disassociating factors with the way students feel and how the administrative response has occurred is that our community at the University of Waterloo hasn't really been established, or we don't have that sense of community, we don't have that sense of place. And not having that sense of community and not having that sense of place exacerbates our fear of not being safe on our campus, feeling vulnerable to attacks like this. I would say the way the administrators had responded to the attack was, given the certain situation that it occurred in and how much time was feasible for them to organize gatherings. And it's specifically today, we are having staff and student forums for students and staff members to ask administrative leaders questions. They are taking approaches to engage with our community, which is a good step forward. But at the end of the day, it will probably never be enough, because that fear of returning to campus, that fear of being vulnerable to attack, that fear of not trusting others around us and not having that community is something that will keep on repeating in our minds every single day that we step foot onto our institution. And hopefully within, I would say, the next few months, we will get to see bigger accountability from our senior leadership at the university. And at this moment at WUSA, we will do our best to advocate for student issues and always go to our senior leadership at the university and expect better, want better, not only for the mental health supports of our students, but also for the LGBTQI+ community, and also focusing on information dissemination about gender identity and gender expression. These incidents, or like this attack that occurred on our campus, isn't isolated. We've seen this around the world. And I think that's another point that students are taking very seriously, because we want to see more engagement from senior leadership, not only through blanketed statements through emails or very minimal communication about updates that they are currently taking, but consistent, clear engagement and consultation with our community. And hopefully that answers your question.
Thanks so much, Katie, and thanks, Fakia, for the question. I think we have time for one more question, if anybody has anything further that they'd like to add. Okay, I see a question in the chat that the community forums today at the University of Waterloo are closed door, no public, no media permitted in. Do you think that's a good way to have these conversations, or should they be more open? I can speak to that a little, and then I'll probably pass to Katie to provide the Waterloo perspective. I think ultimately this is a time of healing for the Waterloo community, and in whatever capacity that needs to happen, I think it's important to give the campus community that space to grieve this hate-motivated attack and to figure out a good path forward. But Katie, if you have any additional comments on that piece, I'm happy to pass it to you.
I think Aubrianna summed it up quite well. The reason why those forums are really private and closed door is so that our community can grieve and we can express our very specific concerns to the senior leadership teams that we know and recognize at our institution. The question of whether they should be more open, maybe perhaps in time, but with an attack so sudden like this and the vulnerability that we currently feel, having those closed session opportunities to just have that open dialogue as a community is something that's really essential for us going forward to establish our sense of place on campus. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Katie, and thank you, Kate, for the question. That's all the time that we have today, so we will wrap it there. Thank you so much, everybody, for attending, and best wishes for a great week and sending care and support to the Waterloo community. Thank you.